I'd like to ask Ms. Annie Baldeo, Manager Policy and Research at the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, to come forward and share with us the telecoms and internet environment in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's give her a round of applause, please.
Folks, good morning. Thank you very much, Shunan. As Shunan said, I'm Annie Baldeo. I work right here at TATT in the Policy and Research Department. And this morning we'll be looking at the telecom and particularly the internet environment in Trinidad and Tobago. So just to give an outline of the presentation for today, I first want to give an overview of what we do at TATT and what are our main functions. Then I'd look at how we went about creating an open telecom and broadcasting industry here in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as what were the recent developments in the telecoms landscape, and then zeroing on the internet environment that we currently enjoy here in Trinidad and Tobago. So first, an overview of TATT. We at TATT, we are the regulator of the telecoms and broadcasting industry in Trinidad and Tobago. We are governed by the Telecom Act. It was passed in 2004, and since then TATT has been in operations. So this year we actually celebrate our 10th year anniversary for being in operations for 10 years in 2014. What is our mandate in accordance with our Telecom Act? Well, it's to guide the sector's transformation from a virtual monopoly to a competitive environment, to regulate and monitor the sector so transformed, and in particular, to prevent anti-competitive practices here in Trinidad and Tobago. The main objects of our Act is contained in Section 3 of the Telecom Act, and they include creating an open telecoms market, ensuring the orderly development of telecommunications, protecting and promoting the public interest, facilitating universal access to telecoms, encouraging investment in telecommunications, and regulating the broadcasting sector. So who do we regulate here at TATT? Well, we have two areas that we look at. We look at the telecom side of things and the broadcasting side of things. In terms of telecommunications, we regulate the domestic mobile network and service providers. We regulate the domestic fixed network and service providers, as well as international facilities and service providers. In terms of the broadcasting sector, we regulate all free-to-air broadcasters, so that includes both radio and TV, as well as the subscription TV, or as most of us know, the pay TV markets. So as Shannon pointed out earlier, just a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, we in Trinidad, we had a monopoly. And as of today, we currently have 85 concessionaires operating in the market. We have 7 concessionaires operating in the international market. In the mobile market, we have 2 concessionaires who provide both voice and internet services to the public. In terms of the fixed telecom market, we have 3 providers who provide fixed telecom services, and we have 9 providers who provide fixed internet services. With respect to the subscription TV market, we have 11 players. With respect to the free-to-air broadcasting market, that's the radio market, we have 38 players in Trinidad and Tobago. In the television market, we enjoy 9 players, and with respect to TV broadcasting via cable, we have 6 players in the market. So what are some of the current developments that we currently enjoy in the telecoms landscape here in Trinidad and Tobago? Well, as most of you all may know, we publish an annual market report every year. And according to our last market report in 2013, the telecom and broadcasting sectors, we generated 5.5 billion TT dollars in revenues, and that amounted to approximately 3.1% of our national GDP. So in terms of the percentage of gross revenues contributed by the different markets, as is the case in most countries, the mobile market contributes the chunk of the revenues for the country. So we have 42% of the mobile market contributing to overall revenues. We have 17% being contributed by the internet market. we have 13.8% being contributed by the fixed voice market, and the pay TV market contributes roughly around 12%. The other markets, they contribute a little less than 5% each towards the sector. So to zero in the individual markets in Trinidad and Tobago, the fixed voice markets, I believe currently we have around 283,000 subscribers, and that takes us to a population penetration rate of about 21.6%. When we look at it in terms of household, we have around 5.6% households in Trinidad and Tobago subscribing to fixed telecom services. So that's roughly more than half of our population having a fixed line subscription. In terms of the mobile voice market, we have roughly 1.9 million subscribers in Trinidad and Tobago. So that means most people are walking around with 2 phones or possibly more than 2 phones. And in terms of penetration, I think some of these slides got a little mixed up. In terms of penetration, that meant that we have 146% penetration rate in terms of mobile in Trinidad and Tobago. In terms of mobile revenues, the mobile market contributes approximately $2.3 billion in terms of revenues. At least that was for 2013. See if we get it on the some technical difficulties. What is ICT presentation without technical difficulties? Okay, so the internet market in Trinidad and Tobago, currently we have 10 providers in the fixed internet and the mobile internet market. 8 of those providers are fixed internet providers, and the 2 being B-Mobile and Digicel, they are our mobile internet providers. In terms of the internet market, currently we have around 232 broadband subscribers in Trinidad and Tobago. And out of that 232,000 subscribers, 99% of internet subscribers in Trinidad and Tobago are broadband subscribers. We just have roughly 1%, that's about 2,000 persons who subscribe to narrowband services. And the reason that they subscribe to narrowband services is because a few areas in Trinidad and Tobago don't currently have broadband services. In terms of residential and business subscriptions, the majority of our subscriptions, they are by residential subscribers. So we have about 216,000 subscribers who are residential, and the remaining, about 13,800 subscribers, they are business subscribers. This is an interesting slide. Just last year, we did an analysis of what is the demand for data, the demand for download speeds in Trinidad and Tobago. And what we saw is that 44% of our broadband population, they request speeds that is equal or above 10 megs. We have 24% of our broadband population requesting speeds between 2 to 10 megs, and we have less than 32% requesting speeds at 256 or below. In terms of the mobile internet market, currently we have 332,000 prepaid mobile internet subscribers. And in terms of postpaid internet subscribers, we have 118,000 persons. And what is interesting to note from this slide is that with respect to the prepaid market, 80% of all prepaid mobile voice subscribers, they use internet packages. And that's mobile internet packages. With respect to the postpaid market, just roughly 48% of persons in the postpaid market subscribe to internet packages. So what does the fixed and mobile internet penetration in Trinidad and Tobago look like? Well, for the fixed internet market, we have 17.4% penetration. For the mobile internet market, we have 33.9%. So altogether, we enjoy a market penetration of 51.4%. In terms of household penetration, we see we are about 54%, which means more than half the households in Trinidad and Tobago subscribe to internet packages. In terms of revenues, the fixed and mobile internet market produced almost $1 billion in revenues for 2013, so roughly about $940.5 million. And 69% of those revenues produced were from the fixed internet market. So how does Trinidad and Tobago compare to some of the other countries out there? Well, in terms of CARICOM countries, this is data that we collected up to 2012. Trinidad and Tobago had the highest internet penetration in the Caribbean, and we were followed by the Bahamas and Barbados, which were half the times that we were in terms of internet subscriptions. Where do our broadband prices, where are we compared to other countries? Well, our cheapest broadband price to date is about $12 US. And that ranks us second in the region, and it ranks us 21st in the world in terms of lowest broadband prices. Where are we in respect to the Network Readiness Index? Well, this was data that was published by the World Economic Forum for 2012, and it showed that our ranking for mobile phone subscribers was around 27 in the world. Our percentage of users using the internet, we ranked about 50. Households with personal computers, around 51 in the world. Households with internet access, around 69 in the world. And fixed broadband internet subscribers penetration, we ranked about 47 in the world. So folks, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would like to encourage you all to visit our website. We have our annual market report, and we have quarterly market updates that we publish. And this information that was presented here today, as well as a lot more information, is contained within those reports. So I would encourage you to visit our website, have a look at the reports, and I would welcome any questions that you guys may have. Thank you.
Can you open this mic for me, please? Please don't go as yet. Okay, we would like to thank Annie for her presentation. Are there questions for Annie? Kevin.
Hi, pleasant good morning. Thank you very much, Annie, for this very wonderful presentation here on the Telecommunications Authority. Very quick question. In terms of the Telecommunications Act and the authorization framework, now, I recall in the past there were these smaller ISPs. Basically, they used to resell IP transit and such. What had been the exact impact of the Telecommunications Act and the authorization framework on them? I mean, besides the obvious, in terms of that initial period when the Telecommunications Authority came into operation.
Okay. Kevin, you were right. We did have a lot of smaller ISPs operating in Trinidad and Tobago. As is required by our Telecommunications Act, anyone who provides a public telecom service is required to register with TATT. So, if not all, the majority of those ISPs, they have registered with TATT, and they are now, most of them are operational. As you can see, we have currently about 11 internet service providers in Trinidad and Tobago, and that includes the big guys as well as the smaller guys. And the smaller guys, what we have found recently is that business is growing so much in the internet market that they used to have a niche concession, and what most of them are doing now is they are expanding to provide national services. So they now have national concessions to provide internet services.
Are there any other questions for Annie? Simon?
Morning, Annie. Thanks
Morning.
for interesting presentation. Love the data. Just wanted to ask what do you think accounts for our nearly 200% mobile penetration rate?
Well, as with a lot of the developing countries, we do see penetration rates that are over 100%, and it's because a lot of people are walking around with 2, 3, 4 phones. And it's not necessarily because, well, in Trinidad, you may have a B mobile phone and a Digicel phone, but some people, they would have 3 B mobile phones, 3 Digicel phones, and so on. So what we have is a lot of persons, whenever there are promotions in the market and so on, they go out, they buy a new phone, they get a new SIM card. And that accounts for a lot of the high penetration rates that we have in Trinidad. When we have foreigners coming into our country, they go to the service providers, they buy a phone. And that number is registered as a mobile subscriber. But what we are trying to do, and what the service providers are trying to do as well, they have a period that they use for recycling numbers. So I believe the period is currently now about 6 months. So if the 6 months has passed and the number is inactive, they are no longer considered a mobile subscriber. But that accounts roughly for a lot of the reasons why it is we have a penetration rate of over 100%. And may I just add that the ITU, in its meeting this year, we had the expert working group of telecommunicators this year. They are seeking to cap the limit on the mobile penetration a country can report 100%. So that would take care of double counting and so on that's happening in the country. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, do you think there's any significant contribution for that over 100% penetration rate from interconnection rates?
Well, initially, I must say, part of it would have contributed to that. But what we have seen recently is that both TATT and Digicel, what they have done, they have, in terms of the retail rates that's charged to subscribers, we see one single rate being charged. So whether it is an on-net call or an off-net call, the rates are currently the same for their subscribers. So I don't think the interconnection rates at this point currently have an impact on the penetration rate being over 100%.
Are there any other questions? Annie? Yes, Bevel?
Morning. First, a comment, Bevel Wooding. First, a comment on the rate and the fact that some of the devices now require SIM cards and those still get counted as mobile devices. So if somebody has a cell phone, a tablet, a laptop that has a SIM card, they will get counted as a mobile subscriber 4 or 5 times, depending on the number of devices. So it's one of those things where the figure is not really any longer a pure indication of mobile phones in the possession of mobile subscribers, 1. 2, you use a percentage for broadband penetration and narrowband, and you didn't state what your cap was for narrowband and what your range was for broadband, and I'd be very curious about that.
Okay,
because the figure seems higher than most people's complaints about the nature of the internet service.
Yeah. In terms of narrowband penetration, it's so low, Bevel, it's under 1%. Oh, well, the definition of narrowband that we use is the ITU's definition, and that's any speeds that's less than 256K. And from the data that we've collected, 99% of the internet subscribers in Trinidad and Tobago, they subscribe to broadband services. Again, as I had mentioned, it's because there are a few areas in Trinidad that, don't yet have broadband services, and that's the main reason. But as you also saw, we seem to be a data-hungry population. We are seeing people subscribing to the highest speeds now. People are subscribing to speeds 10 megs and up. Up to, I think, about 3-4 years ago, residential customers could have enjoyed 100 megs subscription to their home, which is, in the past, you thought only businesses could have subscribed to that type of speeds, but it's available for residential customers as well.
That then raises the next question. Are there any plans to revisit how the authority looks at its definition of broadband, independent from the ITU and others? Yeah. Since there are clearly changes or shifts in user consumption patterns, might a over 256K really be a definition for broadband in the 21st century?
Yeah, and that is one of the questions we have raised at the ITU meetings as well. in terms of our universal service framework for Trinidad and Tobago, we have defined what we consider basic internet services, and we have the speed as 5 megs, because it seems that the bigger players as well as the smaller players, they no longer offer speeds that are under 5 megs. So we're going that way of classifying around 5 megs, and the figure will be revised as the years go by of basic internet services to the public. It would be almost this, well, probably slightly less, because I think broadband penetration rates, because I think it was almost 50% of broadband subscribers, they subscribe to speeds over 10 megs, it would be, I would say, over 50%. You're welcome.
Maybe before you ask your question, maybe I can just give a comment with respect to broadband definitions. Basically, there are 3 definitions out there with respect to broadband. You have the OECD definition, and they define broadband, I think, 780 kilobits per second. So that's broadband for the OECD. Then you have the FCC, that's 256K. But that's a very old definition, because it comes from the time that we only had like dial-up. So that's why, I mean, if you compare dial-up at that particular time, 56K or 64, and with 266K, I mean, that was broadband at that time. So that's a very old definition. And then you have the ITU definition as well, and they are talking about 2 megabits per second. So these are the 3 definitions out there that are being used globally. Thank you.
Good morning. Just a quick clarification on the penetration, the mobile penetration figure that was quoted. Does that also include the proliferation of GPS tracking devices, and so that also use SIM cards?
Actually, no, that figure that we report, it includes just mobile voice subscriptions. What we do, we try to collect data on those type of cards separately from the service provider, so we report on it separately, but the penetration rate that we show there is strictly for mobile voice subscriptions.
Question from online. How much is that 100 megabytes per second service, and is it symmetrical?
It's symmetrical, meaning I would assume it means download and upload. I believe it's really for download. I'm not sure what the upload speeds are, but it is for download capacity. Yeah. There was another part of the price. I can't recall offhand the different service for 100 US. From Flow it's 100 US per month, Curly. Yeah, 100 US per month.
Are there other questions? Sebastian?
Thank you, Sebastian Belagamba. I have a comment regarding the discussion of broadband and the definition of broadband. I think we're reaching the point where it makes no sense to define broadband anymore. I mean, we're reaching the point where we have these kind of speeds, and we have to focus on what kind of services our users are expecting, our consumers are expecting. Because when you have a link, I used to have a 5 meg at home. I'm not a big video user, so I could have had a 5 meg, 10 meg, 20 meg. Unless you hit the roof, you don't care how much you have, because it only cares. I mean, it's only important when you hit the roof. I mean, when you use the full capacity of your link. So my provider could have said that I had 100 meg. If I don't hit the roof, it's theoretical. It's theoretical. So I think we have to move to the next phase in many countries. I'm seeing the development of TATT. It's amazing. I mean, and you're you're mature enough in order to move. What kind of services are we asking as a society? Are we going into video that much? Are we more into web and mail? And that will give us different perspectives of what we need and what we have to provide to our users.
I definitely agree with you. In terms of coming up with the basic the basic speed we had for internet services with regards to a universal service policy, that is one of the things we must consider. What is being demanded of the internet down there? Is it just to go on YouTube, download videos? Is it for checking mail, those type of things? And actually, as one of our deliverables that we will be looking at this year, we would be doing a study to look at the basket of services that an individual consumes and what that basket contains in terms of internet services, in terms of mobile services, fixed services, and what they use such services for. And I think that would definitely impact the definition that we use in defining broadband.
I sort of agree with that point because from both last year and this year, we had similar discussions at some of the ECTEL and TRC forums about defining broadband as a fixed speed. And I was suggesting that we look at it more from a user experience because the available speeds keep changing so quickly that defining it as a speed means that by the time your policy is laid out, it's already outdated. And I like the idea of looking at a basket of common goods and using that to more define it rather than in certain number of megabits or whatever. Another question, as far as the data you collect, do you get that data submitted by the providers, or do you prepare specific surveys to collect all of this data?
We collect the data. We collect primary data from the service providers. We collect the data on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis from all our concessionaires. So the data that you see there, it's first-hand data from the service providers. We also we try every 3 years to conduct a digital divide survey. So in terms of the household data that we present, we get the household data from the digital divide survey. But the more subscription individual data, we collect from the service providers.
Was there ever any resistance from the providers to submit information?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things we're kind of trying to deal with.
Yeah. Well, in the start, when we have been collecting data, I think for about 7 years now, 7 to 8 years now. When we had first started, we did get some resistance from the service providers, but what happened is that when we started publishing our annual market reports and our quarterly market reports, the service providers were the ones that benefited most from it. Even before we published the reports, we would be getting calls from the service providers. When are you all expected to publish the results? Because they use the data that we publish for part of their marketing plans and their strategies and so on. So they look forward to seeing the market reports published as well as the public out there. So we don't have that much resistance now from the service providers in collecting the data. One thing I'd just like to add to that, what makes it a bit easier for the service providers as well, we have a standard questionnaire that we use, and we try as much as possible to not to make changes to the questionnaire. So every quarter when they have to submit the data, it's in a standardized format. What we also include in the questionnaire, we include definitions, and the definitions are according to ITU standards. And those definitions clearly state what type of data we are collecting so that the service providers can extract it from their records for us. So that makes it a bit easier for the service providers on their end in submitting the data.
Yes, good morning, Vijay Sami. I just have a comment, again, with the data that was presented. Thanks very much. It was very enlightening. It paints a bit of a brighter picture of the ICT landscape in Trinidad than what we, I guess, most of Trinidadians would consider as actuality, reality. My comment is just on the way data is reported, in that it is using the speeds that are available in terms of the packages and so on being provided to the general public. But as Sebastian was saying earlier, there's a difference with what is reported, what is provided as a package and the print as actually what the customer is receiving in reality. Because truth and fact is, I'm actually always hitting that limit on my package, right? And when I check, I'm actually not receiving anywhere near the bandwidth that I'm supposed to be receiving in my package and what I'm paying for, right? So there's a huge discrepancy in what the customer is receiving and then what is actually being reported as being available. So I don't know is there anything that the authority is doing to address this type of discrepancy?
Okay, that's a very good point. We actually do get complaints from our consumers out there about the advertised speeds being different from what persons actually receive at their homes, and I think that's a worldwide problem. What we at TATT will be looking to do this year, we want to do what we call a broadband survey. So we're actually going out there to measure what type of speeds persons actually use and see if there really is that level of discrepancy between what is advertised, what people are paying for, and what they are actually receiving. So that is one way we're looking at measuring the type of speeds persons actually receive.
Just to follow on, you said the authorities is revising the definition with the limit of what acceptable broadband is to 5 megabits.
In terms of the universal service policy that we currently have now, because we are ITU member, we use the ITU's definition of what broadband is, and that's 256K and up. But the reality is, and you can see from the graphs that we have, not much persons subscribe to such types of speeds. So what we are doing in the universal service policy, we have defined the speeds as basic 5 megs, but in addition to that, as I said, one of the projects we want to embark on this year is looking at what persons use the internet for. So we're looking at what set of services will constitute a basic basket of services for consumers. We're looking at what persons will be using the internet for, whether it's downloading, whether it's email checking, those type of things, and not just for internet services, for mobile services, for fixed line services as well. And based on what is the outcome of that survey, we may be redefining what we classify as the definition for broadband.
Thank you. One last question on that. Is it the intention of the authority to use that benchmark for any purpose other than to reporting the development in Trinidad and Tobago, or is it going to be used in some ways? For example, is the authority going to go out and sample what the actual available broadband speeds are throughout Trinidad and Tobago?
And that's one of the projects we will be doing, actually getting a sample of what speeds persons actually receive in terms of the packages that they provide. In terms of the definition, as I said, it's in our universal service framework, and because we want to define a certain speed as a basic speed for all persons to receive, we would like that speed to be implemented on some level. If it is we define it as a basic service, then there should not be anything under that. If it's 5 megs, anything under that 5 megs. So it's something we're looking to push forward, 5 megs and up in the near future.
Okay, 2 last questions because we need to move on. Please.
Hi, it's Ms. Baldeo. Does TATT have a view on net neutrality at this time?
Currently, we do not. We are looking at, again, it's one of the projects we have identified for this year. We're looking at net neutrality, we're looking at OTT services, those type of new things that are entering the telecoms landscape. We currently are looking into it. But as of today, we don't yet have a definition on net neutrality.
Okay, our last question, Bevel Wooding.
Yes, Bevel Wooding. One last question related to the issue of tracking. The Caribbean Network Operators Group, CaribNOG, is actually trying to put together a project called Keeping Them Honest. And it involves not just a survey, but an ongoing monitoring of end-user broadband subscription speeds relative to what packages they're doing. I think that would be a wonderful opportunity for collaboration, both with ISOC and with TATT, if you're interested. This issue, as Annie said, is not limited to Trinidad and Tobago. And we've had instances where, because subscribers believe that they're paying for what the package advertises, and the fine print says best effort, and the devices that you use impacts the speed, and the nature of the devices you have on your network impacts the throughput that you get, that it's a very muddled situation in terms of both demanding the speed that you're paying for and providers committing to the speeds that they're offering you. And so it's not a simple matter of saying, I paid for 10, I need to get 10. And so part of what the project is seeking to do is to put devices on the networks out across the region and allow for a real-time tracking, not reporting from ISP to regulator to compilation back out to the public at some point in the future, but actually giving a real snapshot of what's happening across the consumer band in terms of bandwidth utilization, in terms of available speeds, and in terms of actual consumption patterns. That together with the RIPE Atlas project, where we're putting probes out, little boxes that show routing patterns as well, are two of the ways that we're trying to get a real technically relevant or solid snapshot of what are the real dynamics taking place on Caribbean networks as it relates to service provider offerings and consumption service quality. So I think that's something that you can definitely look to as a way of getting an objective measure of what's happening from a consumer standpoint.
Bevel, I think that's a good initiative that we can have some collaboration on, because as we had mentioned, it's a worldwide problem, it's a Caribbean problem, it's not just a Trinidad and Tobago problem.
Okay, we'd like to thank Annie. Let's give her a round of applause.